You're listening to Liberty USA, sponsored by County Citizens Defending Freedom. As an American, you have freedom flowing through your DNA, and we are here to help educate, empower, and encourage you to stand for your freedom.
Hello, County Citizens. It's Lindsay Rivas, and today we are with Dr. James Dunn. James, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, so what do you have your doctorates in?
Education. I graduated from the University of Houston back in Texas many decades ago with a degree in English and professional writing, and I wanted to be a teacher. So as soon as I graduated, I started teaching 7th grade English. Okay. And taught that for many years, went on, got my master's, and then I determined that I needed a little bit more education because I wanted to be a school principal, and I went forth and earned my doctorate in education.
Wow. So are you still a school teacher or principal?
No, I was the principal of 3 schools during my career, and then I moved on to higher education. I became a school dean, university dean at the University of Houston many years ago, and started working in the area of workforce development. And then after that, I founded several conservative-based organizations that provided outreach and education to people in disadvantaged communities, teaching them that they are conservatives, and teaching them about conservative values and principles and the importance of those conservative values and principles in their everyday life. But at the same time, I worked and established a couple of charter schools as well. But my focus after that was working in the political arena. Got very involved in political campaigns at the local, state, and federal level. And most recently, over the last several years, I've managed over 24 school board elections, and we have won, myself and my team, all 25 of those school board seats. And we've elected 25 conservative Judeo-Christian Republicans to those seats. So we're very proud of that. And we want to do more because we know that education and the education of our children specifically is of paramount importance. And we want to make certain that we keep them grounded in Judeo-Christian, Judeo values and principles. And so that means we have to have people that govern them on these boards to share those same principles.
Wow. So let's start from the beginning. I'm curious to know, did you always grow up with these conservative views, or is that something that came later?
Oh, no. I have been a registered Republican for 30 years, ever since I could vote. Oh, wow. My father was a constable. He was the first black Republican constable back in a small county in Texas. Actually, it was Polk County, not Florida, but Polk County, Texas. And so he was the first elected black individual, black man elected in that seat as the constable for that area, which is the equivalent to the sheriff. And he was very much a principled man, a Frederick Douglass Republican, if you will, as he always said.
Okay, Carl.
Yeah, exactly.
So going back to your campaigns, how did you first get into being a campaign manager?
Well, about 4 years ago, a good friend of mine was a principal, then became a superintendent, and then retired, and indicated to me that he was going to run for the school board and he needed help. And a few years ago, I was working with these faith-based conservative groups that I founded, and I said, I don't know if I want to get on that level of running political campaigns, but he persuaded me, and he said that, we're so concerned with state and federal politics, we need to be concerned with local politics, because that's where the biggest differences are made at the local level, with city council people, with commissioner level folks. But he even went further and said school boards are our biggest impactful seats to really have. So help him get on this board and make a difference in these children's lives by empowering teachers and putting forth curriculums that stick with the basics of learning and teaching, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic, and to get all of this other stuff out of the schools. Books that shouldn't be there, folks bringing in different types of theological concepts, and get back to basics, get back to teaching children the fundamentals of learning, and assist them in their development to be productive, tax-paying citizens.
Mm-hmm. How many campaigns have you managed over the last 8 to 12 months?
4.
4.
We have managed 4 campaigns over the last 8 months. And
you've won all 4.
We've won all 4 of them. And I'm going to tell you, these last 4 seats have been in rather huge urban areas, and they have been really challenging. We won each one of them by very small margins because they have become very contentious. The left, our liberal opponents, have gotten money all over the country from various sources that are trying to continue the status quo of indoctrinating our children with all of this anti-American propaganda through books and various other curriculum materials. And so we've been fighting against the money game. But I tell folks all the time, we got to come up with money to fight them. But more importantly, we have to be there to fight them in person. We have to have boots on the ground. We have to fight them in terms of effort, work, and grit. And that's how we've won. It has been a challenge. These last 4 elections have been extremely close. We've had good, strong Judeo-Christian conservative candidates, and we rose to the occasion. So that tells me that we need to continue to fight and fight harder, amplify what we're doing, because the left is not backing down. They're gearing up even harder and stronger, but we are too. Mm-hmm. We will never defeat them with the money game, but we will defeat them with the work and with the effort. And with the Lord's help, we'll continue to win, because whether you win by 1 or you win by 100, you win.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what's one of your strategies? It's a multi-pronged strategy. First of all, let me just say, we don't deal with the media. When we are running our races, the media, the news affiliates with the ABCs, the CNNs, the NBCs, they aren't conservatives' friends. They're there to paint a narrative of extremism on Republicans and on conservatives and on Christians. And so we really focus on our parents, on our community, on our kids. That's what we keep that messaging focused on. We go out in the communities. We do our hand-to-hand combat. We do our block walking. We do our texting, our robocalling. We do our mail-outs. We do our podcast. We do everything that we need to do in order to get the message out to our community, out to our citizens, our tax-paying citizens, our Christians, to let them know we need their engagement in this process. And on all of our social media, all of our materials, our campaign materials, at the very end, hashtag for kids, hashtag for parents, because that's what we're fighting for. And so we're out there, and that's 24/7. Every single day, we do our meet and greets. We engage our parents, our taxpayers in our campaign. It's never ending. It's 24/7, and so we just inundate our community. We let them know that we're here, and this is important. So if you don't know us back when, you definitely know us now, because we're going to make certain that we are there in your face every single day. In person, online, in the newspaper, on the phone. We've established huge volunteer phone banks in our campaigns. We put together meet and greets almost every week where we have folks sign in to text people for us. So whereas our opponents, our leftist and Democrat opponents, pay millions of dollars for these phone banks, we get volunteer phone banks, and we have dedicated people that text out our materials, our messaging every single day, every single evening, every single weekend, to get the message that it's about the kids, it's about the taxpayers, it's about the parents, taking our schools back and giving them back to the parents. Wow. How long does a campaign last for? Like, when you get hired, is that a 2-month process? Do you come in at 8 months? Is it a year long? What's the timeline?
Well, ideally, we would work with a candidate just as they filed or were beginning to run. But
oftentimes we find ourselves being brought in once a candidate's already gotten started and they're trying not to lose. Because I tell people all the time, I do this weekly talk and I tell them, there's no room for second place. You've got to win. No one ever remembers second place. They only remember who wins. So it's nice to say, oh, I ran and got this number of votes, but you still lost. Yep. So the purpose is to win. And so when we get in there, generally a school board race is 4 to 6 months, just depends on the county, the state, the school district, and how they run their elections. But generally, when we get in there, it's a 4 to 6 month process. We would love to be able to work with candidates that are thinking about being candidates, to teach them what they need to do and what they not need to do, run the numbers in their district to determine the geographics and the demographics. That helps us with our approach and our strategies, but that's not always, I tell people all the time, it seems like we're the big hope that comes in when things are sinking and there's some concern about winning, but we always pull it off. But generally a school board election period of time is 4 to 6 months.
There's this quote you might know. It's from a funny movie, but it's, if you ain't first, you're last.
That's right. I know. That's right. That's absolutely right. Nobody cares about, I ran for this 10 years ago and I got so many votes. And in fact, I had a candidate once told me, I ran for this seat a few years ago. I got the most votes than any other Republican that ran for it. I still lost, but I got the most votes. You lost. And then I must tell this funny little story right quick. We had a Republican candidate that it was one of the third largest cities, and he won. It was a nasty campaign. They sent mailers out about his family. Oh my God, it was absolutely horrific. And a couple of his former opponents showed up once he was sworn into one of his board meetings, and they were saying something, and the only thing he would say to them, he would put up his hand with an L, as though to tell them, okay, that's what he would do. So it feels good to win. It feels good to win, and you have to win. Conservatives have to win, period. There's no room for second place. It really isn't. We're at a period of time in our country where, we have to take control, assert control. You can't just merely be one or two of your kind of conservatives or Christians on a board. You have to get the majority so you can affect policy and move the agenda. We're in a very difficult time in our public education right now, and there's really not any time to waste in terms of getting our kids back on track.
We talked before this, but you brought up, and we'll use Polk County as an example, how they have $1 billion, correct?
$2 billion budget in Polk County.
Oh, I was just $1 billion off.
That's it.
Just that. $2 billion, yet we can't pay our teachers more.
That is the most very concerning and hurtful thing, and I'm going to say hurtful, that I've been dealing with in my 20 plus years in public education. As a former principal, I dealt with teachers who really were committed to the profession. Most of them were married, so they had that supplemental income. But you have many teachers in this day and age, in the 21st century, that aren't married, that rely on that salary to support themselves. So I think it's absolutely horrific that we have not adequately salaried our teachers. They have the most precious control in our world, and that's our children. On the day they spend the most time with our children than anybody else, even the parents. And so for us not to pay them adequately so they could be able to support themselves and to prepare for the future, to support families, it's really horrific. Teachers should be earning at minimum $80,000 a year throughout this country. I just really believe that. I'll go on record and say that. And if we can spend on contractors billions of dollars, millions of dollars for work that really is substandard. And if we can spend millions and millions of dollars, not only here in Polk County, but in other school districts, on furniture that we throw away because we have to justify rolling over new money and buying new stuff, and we shouldn't have the old stuff, it's really atrocious. It's really a crime. It's really a crime. Teachers should be one of the highest paid professions in this country.
It's sad because I think of all the people that I know that went into teaching, and I had a couple friends that got their degrees in elementary education, and when they went into schools, they all left within 6 months because of how horrendous their experience was.
You're absolutely right. We have a huge recidivism problem in public school teachers in this country. In Texas, we are thousands and thousands of teachers in the hole. We have vacancies all over the state of Texas. That's the same story in Florida. That's the same story in California. That's the same story in Illinois and so many other states. There are huge teacher vacancies.
It's probably going to get worse too in every other state.
Most definitely. Every single state is experiencing teacher vacancies and issues right now because people do not want to go in the profession. They don't want to go in the profession because of money. They don't want to go in the profession because of the bureaucracy and the politics. They don't want to go into the profession because they're tired of seeing things that are going on in these schools that are wrong with all of this CRT, with all of this indoctrination and all the questionable curriculums. And, you know, and I tell people all the time, if you focus on the basics of teaching and education, you'll never go wrong. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what you send your kids to school to learn, not all this other stuff.
It makes me nervous because I'm like, if all the great teachers are leaving, then just the simple 2 + 2 = 4, then we're gonna have, then not very good teachers.
You're absolutely right. You don't want substandard teachers teaching your kids. No. You don't want people that look at that are teaching your kids just as a temporary job because they can't find a job. You want people teaching your kids that they are called to this profession. It's like a preacher. You don't want a preacher that's just looking for a temporary church because he doesn't have one to be preaching to you. You want someone who was actually called to preach to you. We owe it to our children to make certain that they have the best of the best. And I'm sorry, it costs to have the best of the best. Nothing comes cheap. If you want a teacher that's cheap, that you can pay them nothing to come in, I would really highly question that particular teacher, because if you're worth your salt, you're going to say, no, I need more than that because I know I'm good at what I do.
Now I'm going to ask you a question. Our listeners are probably wondering along with me. And you don't have to give me specific numbers, but I'm just curious, is hiring a campaign manager with a whole team, is that a pretty penny?
It's very expensive. I have 2 people that work with me on a day-to-day basis. And we generally, between me and those 2 people, manage between 4 to 7 campaigns at any one time. Now, if we have had any other campaigns beyond that number, I would simply have to, engage some other people in my circle to come and work with us. But one of the greatest attributes of what I do, is that we have a strategy. We have a template. We have a template that I patented internally on how you win elections. And I'm not going to tell anybody. And whether you're dealing with 5 candidates at one time or 50, it works. And you will win.
Right.
25 so far.
Right. Our founder, Steve Maxwell, he always says that his grandfather used to tell him 2 things, and one of them was, you can't argue with someone's success.
That's right.
And that reminded me of it, because when someone's won every single school board that they have ever campaigned for, you can't argue with your special sauce that you have going on.
That's right. That's right. Know your worth. Know your value. And there's no room for second place. There's no room for second place. You've got to be number one in what you do.
If you get anything out of this podcast,
you get that. That's right.
Don't be second place.
No, that's it. That's the main takeaway. No room for second place. You have to go in it to win it. Be in it to win it. Because right now we're in a place in our society where I think the Lord commands us to be perfect in what we do. And when I say perfect in what we do, be the best at what we do. Be number one. And if you're doing it because of Him, you surely should be number one.
Amen to that.
Amen.
So for regular, everyday civilians and county citizens and the normal average person, how can we engage when we see campaigns? Like if you could tell an audience what would help you out in your, what's the word? Your clients, your clients, the people running, what would help their campaign? Like, what can we do? What's the call to action for us to do?
I'm glad you asked that question. You know, one of the things that we're missing in political campaigns today is that volunteer engagement. There was a time 10, 15, 20 years ago where you never really had to have paid campaign managers on this level or paid staff on that level. Usually you had so much civic involvement that people were just inching to get involved and to volunteer and to volunteer to block walk, to volunteer to call, to volunteer to help out a candidate because they believed in that candidate. They really believed in his or her ideas on improving whatever they were campaigning for. We don't have that now. We don't have that sense of engagement. Voter turnout is one of the worst levels today than it has been in the whole history of voting in America. On average, you have 7% of the total voter registration rolls to actually vote in any specific election. That is horrific. You have, in a particular county, you may have a million people in a county. 380,000 of those million people are registered to vote, but only 25,000 people vote. That's less than 10% of the total registration. And I'm giving an example of a specific county that I'm citing in my head.
That's horrible.
And it's absolutely horrible. So you're talking about a very small, minute number of people making decisions that will impact everyone. And that is unconscionable. So I believe that if you can do anything, get engaged politically with whatever you believe in. I believe in Christian values now, so but we don't want to vacillate on that. But make certain that you get engaged, register to vote, be involved in the system, and be involved so you can make a difference. You can't complain if you don't vote. And I tell people all the time, you can go out here and protest and do this, that, and the other, but you've got to elect people that believe in what you believe in order for you to affect policy. And I mean, because if you don't come out and engage, you won't be able to make that effect.
And I think about how media is used sometimes for political campaigns, and there's always a call to action, right? And I remember when I saw the draft of Roe v. Wade leaked, the call to action was, they took your rights, let's take their seats, vote in November. And I was like, that call to action, wow. There's a call to action to every piece of media that we're consuming, whether we know it or not. If we're just reading it, subconsciously there's a call to action somewhere.
Right. You're absolutely right. And unfortunately, the only time you see a real uptick in voter participation and activism is when there is some sort of controversial or perceived controversial issue that comes about, or perceived a call to action where you have to folks feel as though they need to get engaged. Right now, national voting trends of Republicans, registered Republicans, is up. In the last 6 months, voting registrations and engagement among registered Republicans is up significantly. Republican voters are coming out because they are engaged. They are concerned about our economic situation, inflation, gas prices. So that's that call of action that you're referring to.
Now.
That's right. It's affecting you. And right now, and these school boards are becoming hyper partisan because, you're talking about CRT, transgender education. All of these issues are rearing up people's emotions, and they're becoming more and more engaged. And that's why these elections are becoming closer and closer in terms of margins, because, the left has been really leading the way, but the right is catching up, and they're giving them a run for their money. We're giving them a run for their money, and we're winning.
Right. And I wasn't even aware that school board meetings were really a big thing up until COVID shut down. And I remember watching the live streams being like, are the schools going to open back up? What are they going to do? That was like my first memory of watching a school board. Now I'm at school board meetings all the time.
That's
It's just funny because I feel like in my friend group and my generation, we have our attention more on politics than I feel like we ever have.
Right.
Because of it involves every aspect of our life now.
That's right. The voting group 18 to 30, the engagement of that group is up 23%. And through the Pew Research data polling, and because issues of economic instability, rights, individual rights and liberties, they are becoming more and more increasingly controversial because folks are perceiving them to be challenged by the government. The government is challenging individual liberties and rights. They're saying you don't have liberties and rights, that we control this. You can't do this. You can't do that. So, Americans fought for this land to be free and to have rights, and for our own elected government to tell us, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. They're becoming a little bit peed off. And so you're getting folks more and more engaged in the political process now. So I'm excited about it because I tell you, I'm even though these margins have been close, I'm enjoying it because I like a good fight.
Right.
And so people getting out there voting, if the byproduct of all of these societal issues that we have going on is more people engaged in the political process, that's great.
We'll take it.
That's great. Because at the end of the day, and even at the beginning of the day, Judeo-Christian values and principles will win each time. Those candidates that hold those principles and values, each candidate, each person, each race will have the victor.
You're right.
That's right.
Well, county citizens, if you take anything from this, it's that you have to come in first.
That's right. No L's.
No L's around here.
Right.
But also you have to be aware of what's happening in your county so that you can engage and be an active citizen.
That's right. That's right. You have to be engaged.
Did I miss anything?
No.
All right.
You got it.
Well,
that's it.
Dr. James, thanks for coming.
Okay. Thank you for being here. I thank you for being here and thank me for being here.
Right.
I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good. This was really good.
Thank you for tuning in to Liberty USA, sponsored by County Citizens Defending Freedom. Give us a like or drop a comment, follow us on social media, and share with your friends. If you liked what you heard, support our mission in empowering American citizens to defend their freedoms and liberty at the local level. Learn more and fund your freedom today by donating at ccdfusa.com. Remember, freedom is in your DNA.